a small bit of a needle there.
Come on, Mayo, you've got to get Andy Moran into the game.
Listen back to Eden, and now they're really rolling. And I can tell you, that there won't be a cow milk in County Clare for at least a week.
So I received correspondence last night from a man I know, Mort Brannock. He asked a great question. I should say he played a bit of football himself, coaches a bit now, as well as coaching boxing. And he's been to see his county play in every match they've played so far this year, whether it was the pre-season competition or the league. And he wants to know this. If you had to call the All-Ireland winners based on the league so far, who would you go for? We're going to try and answer that question today. And we're also going to look at promotion and relegation across the National Football League, at the rise of Louth and the fall of Kildare, and at much, much more. My name is Paul Rouse, and I'm joined by former Mayo footballer and manager James Horan, by the former Sligo footballer Neil Ewing, and by Maurice Brosnan of the Irish Examiner. James, straight up, if you had to call the All-Ireland winners based on the league so far, who would you go for?
God. Well, if you're looking at consistency at the minute, Mayo are obviously in a very strong position. I think they've been far ahead of each team that they've played, in particularly the three that they've won. Dominant against Kerry and Tyrone. I thought dominant against Roscommon at the weekend. Ran out of a bit of juice maybe at the end, but they're running very, very strong, doing very, very well. So they'd be very strong. Of course, our dear neighbours, after the last couple of games in particularly yesterday, at 14 men. Obviously, Galway, talking about Neil. 14 men against the wind down, and to come back and win, really strong there. So they look good. But look, then you're looking around Derry, and you're looking at obviously Dublin there, and even the way Cavan are playing further back. So they're the ones that are showing. But I just ultimately you don't really know what's happening this year. I think. Yeah,
that's it, isn't it? I was thinking that last night. That's exactly it. I don't know where things are.
There's such variation from game to game. Look at Tyrone. In their last couple of games, the difference. And we talked here about their attitude and where they were, and then they come out with that performance, against Kerry. So it's a very unpredictable league. And I think that's compounded by a number of different things. Injuries obviously play a factor. The change in seasons and how the GA calendar now is, and then on top of that, you have changes this year with the new format, what the provincial championship will be, then the All Ireland and the group series, etc., etc., etc. So you've managers that are looking. Not at league first, I would say, looking at where they be short, medium, and long term. And medium being the provincials, and long term being obviously the All Ireland series and Tolchin. So I don't think the performances that we see are truly reflective of teams' capabilities, I suppose, in a simple way of saying it. So, but having said that, like if you're there's a couple of managers in positions now they don't want to be in. They're facing relegation battles. If you're Jack O'Connor, I know Jack said didn't really put too much into the league and they were slow coming back and all that kind of stuff, but they're facing a relegation battle. That's what you don't want. That's weight you don't want as you're looking to move into the next phase of the season, when the provincial championship. So it's very unpredictable, I would say, at the moment, Paul, based on a number of factors.
Neil, you're very welcome to the podcast. How do you look at it so far? Who do you see as being favourites for the All-Ireland based on the league?
Yeah, I suppose that qualifier that you're adding at the end of that question based on the league is the key part there. If you look at it solely based on the league, it's very hard to look past Mayo. The only thing there is, with that question, it's very hard to, I suppose, exclude all the other information that you have available to you. And, for me, probably the best team in the country still at the minute are Kerry, even if they haven't showed it in this league. If you were to look at, all the information available to you, Tourist Championship. I think James touched on a very important point there in terms of the unpredictability of this league or how much you can read into it. I think probably for a number of reasons, we've ended up for the first time in a few years where we don't have the 8 best teams in the country in Division 1. And, that's no slight maybe on some of the teams that are in Division 1, but I think undoubtedly Derry and Dublin are 2 of the best 8 teams in the country. They find themselves in Division 2. There's been, a few counties in Division 1 have had probably maybe not chaotic winters, but winters that they wouldn't have liked. So Division 1 is maybe not where it has been for the last number of years, where you've definitely each year had probably 7, if not the 8 best teams in the country there. So Division 1 form isn't what it would have been the last 5-6 years. And then Division 2, you have 2 of the best teams in the country. I don't know, maybe I'm overestimating, but I think Cork as well are a team that could have a say later on in the championship. But in terms of taking just league form, I think Mayo, and then, looking, it seems crazy, but to take a team from Division 2, I think Derry are a team that we have to look at as well as an All-Ireland contender.
And Maurice?
I think the lads nailed it there. There's definitely the one caveat that you had to the point about basing it on league, Paul, is that it's a lot harder to read into Division 1 than it is Division 2. If you look at the two, what do you want to call them, the warm-ups for rematches we're going to get in the first round of the Connacht Championship and the Munster Championship this summer. So you're going to have Cork played Clare last weekend, Roscommon played Mayo last weekend, and they're both going to play each other in 5-6 weeks' time. And the difference in approach to both games is particularly interesting. Cork went gung-ho for that game. They seem to have a lot invested in it. It's no surprise, but the second I arrived in Dr. Hyde Park yesterday, it was very obvious that there was talk of changes the minute you got there, that neither of these teams were going full bore. I thought it was really interesting, even when Mayo did bring on Ryan Runhu and Aidan O'Shea, they didn't give Roscommon one chance to throw a match up against Aidan O'Shea. He was brought on around the middle of the field for all the success we've talked about him on the edge of the square. So I think when you talk about shadow boxing, Paul, sometimes it is come back to that idea of how much stress goes into these games. You can see that in Division 2, even the Derry Dublin game Saturday night, like Brian Fenton fist bump to the crowd. There was a lot invested into that game, and I don't see the same level in some Division 1 games. So I find it harder to read into form of all the divisions. Actually, I find it nearly harder to read into the form in Division 1 compared to what we're seeing elsewhere.
That's an excellent answer, Maurice. Except, who do you think is going to win the All-Ireland based on where we start so far?
It's a roundabout way of saying I don't want to base it on what we've seen so far, but if I have to, I'll say Mayo.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna make myself very, very popular. But I think Galway are the best team that I've seen so far from the matches. I think they've clipped along really nicely. I thought the day that Mayo took Tyrone apart down in Galway were having a really nice hard-won victory that was there. They went to Monaghan, they beat Monaghan, who they've had trouble with in the past. I think that I do accept that being down Silk and Malloy is difficult, but I think they put together a pretty serious panel there, and I think Kerry are the team to beat, but I think Galway are the ones who are closest to them. James, Dublin, Derry. Where do Dublin stand now?
Yeah, we had a chat about them last week and a must-win game up there. I thought they should have won the game. So I wouldn't look as much into the 1-point defeat as such. I thought, look, we know where Derry are. I think it's always right to recognise the winners. I think Derry are a really, really good team. Really well organised. And look at that sounds, I'm not trying to diminish them in any way. They've some really, really good players, excellent players that we saw in the second half when they went for the last day. But so there's a lot. They're bubbling along very, very nicely, Derry, and Rory be delighted with that game. The Dubs coming to town, Dubs wanting to win, wanting to get their confidence back. It was a big game. You saw the way Dublin started. How they went about that and the prep for the week, you could tell that they were really good, Dublin, in the first 20 minutes, and Derry were the opposite. But Rory be delighted with that. I think I saw a quote from him this morning. Not trying to disrespect the rest of Division 2, but they know they're better than a lot of the other teams in there. So for Dublin to come up and for them to beat them, that's huge for their confidence and belief. So Derry be delighted. As far as Dublin, as I thought they were. I thought the first 25 minutes. I thought the crispness of their passing, particularly hand passing, which is what I always associate Dublin with when they're playing well. The hand pass is crisp, it's quick, it's right into the runner's path. It doesn't have to break stride. They're all moving and all have are all in sync. So I thought that was there and conducted by Brian Fenton, who when he's playing well, it makes it look so easy. And he was drifting out to right half forward there, and he got so much ball in the first half. Out in that pocket and did well, and they looked. Gannon was pushing hard, and Khan was dangerous as ever up front. So there was a lot of stuff that was good. Now Derry made it very easy for them.
I was just going to say to you, do you remember that five-a-side soccer team you were talking about last week with yourself and Peter Canavan and things? I think you could have probably been looked fairly comfortable the way Derry played in the first half.
Yeah, I don't know why or how a team would I'd say fitness to get us in the end, Paul. That'd be the only thing. But I don't know how, and I'm sure Rory will be addressing that, and they've a method of play, which is very, very effective. But they got it wrong in the first half. They were just dropped too deep, and that happens maybe when your energy and focus isn't what it should be. You just drop a little bit safer, become a little bit more conservative, and you don't make those hard runs from player 1 to player 2 to player 3. Keeping the ball outside. You drop off that a little bit, and then you drop a little bit more, and all of a sudden it's hard to shake that malaise. You need half time to just get 4 or 5 of the key guys and get it sorted and get the structure back again, and that's what I'd say they did. So but look, back to your question, Dublin. I thought there was. Do
you not think before you say anything? Do you not think though, when the squeeze came on in the second half, Dublin wilted, and they weren't able. You can argue about a couple of decisions. You can argue about a couple of missed goal chance and all of that. But did they not wilt under the pressure of a bit of an onslaught in the second half in a way that isn't common?
They're not the team they were. Their confidence is rattled. Dublin's confidence isn't what it was. So they're searching for that. They're searching for wins to eke out hard things so that they can build their confidence, because it's a bit frail compared to what they were. They, even playing badly, they won games anywhere, anytime against anyone. They had players to bring on that they knew would do it. All that kind of stuff. They don't really have that. But I suppose the point I'm making at the beginning, Kieran Kilkenny squares that ball. I've never seen Kieran Kilkenny not give the right pass at the right time, particularly a hand pass, because that's what he's brilliant at. Yeah. He's that leaning forward motion where he almost falls when he passes it. He passes it with a bit of topspin on it, and it dips into Cormac Costello. And Cormac Costello, he can head or volley that. He can almost do whatever he wants with that because he's so much like
make a sandwich with it and then score.
I can't believe that. And sometimes the manager, I remember, I'd look into that a bit more, because Kieran Kilkenny sees Cormac Costello all day long in my opinion. And even when Kieran hand passed over there, he turned around. He didn't acknowledge that Kieran Costello was there. I just find some things like that a little bit strange. So I could be looking too much into that, but that was the winning of the game for Dublin. So Dublin could have and probably should have won that. I thought it was a foul out of the far side as well with the last play. But to finish my point, I know I'm waffling a bit, but Brendan Rodgers' score at the end, I accept your point. For him to get through and waltz through like he did, now he's a brilliant player and he's very fast. But there was the amount of Dublin people there that were in close proximity, Dublin defenders, that didn't really try that. Everything that you've got to whatever happens, he doesn't get the shot off. That wasn't there. That wasn't there. Exactly that's the one thing that you take up. Right? Okay, still not all right. Maybe.
I see this is exactly it. So it's that score, but it was also in the middle of the half when Derry got back into the game. I thought Dublin didn't body up on the tackles the way they often do, where you can see that they are absolutely hammered down to get a hand in here, and you're not going by us regardless of what. And they held the line, and they thought. And Neil, I was wondering about this. Is that just? Should we not read too much into that because it's the start of March and they're trying to go, or should we be looking at saying There's a couple of lads here who are just not able anymore. And I suppose I'm specifically asking you, when you are coming towards your end as a player, like, is that what the problem was? You just couldn't quite get there.
Yeah, and I think maybe just to start off for a bit of perspective, we're talking about a Dublin team going up to Derry, probably one of the form teams in the country, a possible contender for the All-Ireland, losing by 1 point in a league game in March. We're reading an awful lot into that, and we're probably comparing this Dublin team to a generational team. Like, so it's a very high bar that we're judging them against. In terms of maybe some of the more established players on the Dublin team, and maybe when that you're in trouble, maybe from my own perspective, it was probably a few years before I finished. I remember there was a winter we went back to do some fitness tests in first session, and it was probably the first winter that guys who would have had 6-7 years of development squad exposure, maybe S&C work done, came in, and you've seen the aerobic capacity some of these guys had in October or mid-October. You're kind of blown away. That maybe starts to plant the seed with you. But I think for some of those Dublin guys, the transition that Dublin have had in the last number of years from some of the big names that we all know, it was probably a little more gradual. Whereas, to be fair to Desi Farrell, in the last 2 years, I think there's been more of a bigger transition. And I think James is probably very well placed to talk about it. And he managed a transition in the Mayo group of a lot of guys at the one time probably moving on. And what Mayo seemed to have at that time was phenomenal athletes coming through again, in terms of physical specimens. And now, I always think, and maybe James again will correct me if I'm wrong on this, but that was something that James and Mayo targeted, was getting those guys with that athletic ability. And that's maybe something I've noticed in the Dublin guys that have come in. They're not maybe those athletic, and maybe it's the wrong term to use, but freaks that they had before. The likes of Michael Darragh McCauley's, Paul Flynn's, they were just absolutely phenomenal athletes first and foremost, and, phenomenal footballers on top of that. The Dublin guys coming in at the minute, you can argue maybe where their skill levels are at, but I don't think they're as physically dominant as they were before. And people used to talk about Dublin's execution of the basics and their ability to grind teams down. And, I think a lot of that came from physical dominance before. And often they got a score. It was just an easy score from the edge of the D. But it was an easy score from the edge of the D because there was a guy making one more overlap and run. It was an easy hand pass over the bar. So I just don't think they're at that anymore. So those established players don't maybe have the legs around them that the established players maybe 5-6 years ago had.
Yeah, actually, James Neal has made a really good point there about the Mayo transition. How do you know when a player is done?
How do you know when a player is done? Well, the player knows himself.
Did you have any conversations with lads who came to you and said, "I'm not feeling it anymore"?
You would, as Neil said, in 2021 we'd a huge amount. We'd 8 players that went in a very short space of time. Huge servants to Mayo. But you have all kinds of conversations with players, and at intercounty level, confidence can be a huge thing, and players know themselves are getting a little bit older, or if they get beaten for a ball, they're wondering, is their speed gone a little bit, or is their endurance gone? So you have that sort of natural doubt. I would say that it would be there. There'll be some obvious ones that some people over winter, depending on an age profile, usually will just reflect and see where they are, and maybe with their partner or their family or whatever, just can't face into the pre-season as it comes, as it's coming up, and just make a life decision there. So there's some of that. So there's various different types of one. It's a much more difficult conversation if there's a player that you see that's
just going to ask you about this. I was just going to ask you.
That's just not there, but I suppose the transition we dealt with, a lot of those players were huge players for Mayo for 10, 12 years that know the game, know the scene inside out. So a lot of those guys they'd be making their own call as such. Some of the guys that retired, Chris Barsh and Riche, those guys still had something to offer at an inter-county level. Maybe not every league game, not maybe every training or whatever. In a different capacity, but the competitors that they are, they make a decision based on what they think they can do. So there's multiple different conversations, Paul.
And when you retired, when you finished playing yourself, when did you know that you weren't able anymore?
Oh God, yeah. Retired in 2002. I came back in 2002. I think Pat Holmes had taken over. Yeah, I came back in, and I knew from session one that the legs weren't great, and maybe just the motivation wasn't that strong. And there's loads of factors for me in that. I had a serious operation the year before. The rehab back then wouldn't be as well managed as it is now, etc., etc. So I came back in pretty poor shape. A lot of stuff, changing jobs and family and that kind of stuff. So and again, the lifestyle wouldn't be as well managed as it is for an inter-county player now as such. So just there was a lot of different pulls going on. So when the training, and back then it was a lot of Neil, there's a lot of laps, or we were doing a lot of running on Inniscrone Beach, and we're, all that kind of hard stuff was going on. So for me, the motivation wasn't there, and then so the fitness wasn't there, and you're a little bit older, you're maybe even getting a little bit cranky on stuff. So I knew that I wouldn't be near what I could be, but stuck it out. It was a free taker back then and that kind of stuff, and sort of stuck it out. I got a couple of points a game, but hanging around the edges of games, because you didn't have the trust. And I remember it ended up actually in the quarterfinal. We played in Croker, we played Cork, and I wasn't fit, but I was marking Kieran O'Sullivan, and Jesus Christ,
yeah,
this guy.
That's a long afternoon.
So I remember long ball was kicked in. I was full forward, right, and Kieran O'Sullivan was behind me. Long ball was kicked in, but the bounce was high, so I was run towards it. So I had to stop to get the bounce. The bounce right, it would have gone over my head. Stop a little bit. Kieran O'Sullivan came from behind me and sort of smashed it as I went to crack. Smashed it down in front of him. Ran past me. Got the break, his own break, and ran up the field. It's like the Red Sea opened. There was no one in front of him, and he started running 60 or 70 yards. And I just knew so I put the head down and started running after him, and he just pulled away. And after that, I knew, you know what, I sort of shouldn't be out here. So I think soon after that, I got called to the sideline, and that was it. But basically, you know yourself, a player, and if your motivation isn't there to try and eke out every single bit that you can, well, then you'll be found out.
You should have done a lot of pointing at other lads there, James. I think just pass him on, pass Kieran. I'd be passing Kieran O'Sullivan on very early.
Yeah.
Maurice, you were in Hyde Park, so I think Mayo have been excellent in the league, but I'll tell you my worry for Mayo, and it is when against Armagh they didn't close out the game, and against Roscommon yesterday they didn't really close it out. Ben O'Carroll had a chance at the end for a winner. I thought they were a little bit loose at the end, and maybe again, I know they changed the team a whole lot, and maybe that's just not right to focus on that. But that's a niggle that's there. Did you get that sense there, or what did you think of Mayo yesterday?
I didn't get this. It's for all the talk about the old Mayo, they're still, or the new Mayo, sorry, they're still the old Mayo. Like, they're still as entertaining a team as you're going to find in the country, and what looked like a kind of a relatively comfortable afternoon suddenly became a very dramatic finish. But I have to say, I think they would have absolutely stole it. If Roscommon won that game, they would have absolutely stole it. Like, Mayo were comfortably the better team, I thought, for large stretches of that game. A lot of their players who are standing up now are guys who got exposure over the last couple of years and are really starting to make it their own. I thought Jack Carney in centre forward was absolutely excellent. David McBride, fullback. Sounds like Roy Brickenden has a long-term injury, so that jersey could suddenly become his. Bob Tuckey came on, kicked a great point on his left foot. So I think there's a lot of encouraging signs with Mayo. I wouldn't necessarily read too much into the manner of they close the game. As I said, I think the Mayo we see in 5 weeks will be very different, and already there's a lot of positive signs within it. Even just small stuff in the first half, Paul. Like there's no team in the country who you shouldn't carry into contact against as much as Mayo. I think they 10 turnovers in the first half. So, Matthew Horan, a textbook tackle down the touchline. Dave McBride had a great one. Coyne in the other corner. So there's a huge amount of encouraging signs around them. I just find it hard to put too much stock in the manner of that late class. Maybe the 2 goals, but I think the most interesting moment for me was Ryan O'Donoghue comes in on the touchline, very similar to that Kilkenny one, but they're 3 points up. They just conceded a goal. He's only on the field a minute, and he decides to square it to the back post to Tommy Conroy. I thought that was really interesting that they went for that. And I asked Kevin McStay afterwards, if he had the chance back, what would he have done? Like, what would you have liked your player to do in that situation? And he was adamant. If we're coaching lads Tuesdays and Thursdays to hit the man on the back post, he has to take that chance. Like, you can't. I think his quote was, "You can't coach guys to be safe." So it was interesting in the context of with three of those incidents this weekend. Armara point up against Donegal, ball is squared back across Mernon. He fluffs it. Kilkenny doesn't give it and puts the ball over the bar. That's the only one that scored. The Tommy Conroy rattled the crossbar. So even still, I still think Kilkenny should have squared it back across. But overall, I wouldn't read too much into the manner they're closing that game, because I don't know how much stock either of these teams are putting into this game.
Yeah, were you impressed with Roscommon?
No. I wasn't impressed with Roscommon. I was very impressed by the manner. The first 20 minutes, I thought they were very poor, like as poor as you'll see. Just incredibly naive. They didn't score anything. They were very lucky to get, I think it was a free to finally get off the mark. But the manner of their fight back, just whatever you want to call it, the spirit and resolve that they have was particularly impressive. The one thing that was glaring for me yesterday was I do think Ultan Harney is such a massive loss for that team. Like, just somebody else, a guy who the more and more you watch him, the more you realize how integral he's become to this version of Mayo, kind of as a defensive midfielder, is Jim O'Connor. I think the work he gets through is absolutely phenomenal. That block at the end kind of summed it up for me. And Roscommon would, as good as they are and as powerful a run as they are, they would really use a holding midfielder like in that mould. So I think that the more and more we go into the summer, the more and more you realise that's a huge loss. But the way they fought back was good. They got a huge impact off the bench. Dara Craig came on and looked lively. But beyond that, I thought they were very patchy. The same thing I would have said about the Galway game. That was the worst game I've been at this year. I thought they were lucky to get a win there. So I think they're coming back to the mean here. To be on 3 wins at this stage is still a good outcome for us coming.
Yeah, and not safe though either. And that's the fascinating thing about it, Neil. They could still be in bother there.
Yeah, I heard David Burke interviewed on the radio yesterday, and I thought it was very interesting. He was asked about, did he want to make a league final? He entertained the question, and I absolutely love David Burke. Every time I hear him talk, you're really reaching for a pair of boots. That enthusiasm that he has. I just thought it was maybe a little bit naive that even entertained the thoughts of wanting to be in a league final or not, because I think Roscommon are in a right bit of trouble. Just looking at the fixtures that they have coming up. I don't think 6 points is going to be enough to keep them
They're
safe.
away to Kerry and at home to Donegal, who Donegal will also be on that last day fighting for their lives, most likely. Yeah,
like it's going to be very hard to go to Kerry and get a win there, and then you're probably into possibly a relegation playoff on the last day against Donegal. Roscommon 6 points. If Kerry beat them, that'll bring Kerry to 6. Kerry are going to have them on the head-to-head. So I think Roscommon, after the great start, are probably in a perilous position, and definitely Kevin McStay will be probably, maybe it goes without saying they're top of Division 1, but himself and Rory Gallagher will be very, very happy managers after the weekend. But probably most happy because of the patchy periods that both their teams showed and what they're going to learn from that in victory.
Yeah, that's the thing. This thing of relegation, it's one thing to be relegated from Division 1, but to be relegated from Division 2 or Division 3 is a huge knock on a team. And I suppose there's no real easy way to ask you this question, but what's it like to be relegated?
Who's that question aimed at? I suppose. Unfortunately, I had experiences of relegation. No, probably the perception might have been that Sligo or regular candidates for relegation. But I suppose over my 13, 14 years involved, we had 2 relegations, and they both kind of bookended my career. So, I came in 2008. We had successive promotions in 9 and 10, got up to Division 2 and played Division 2 2011. And actually a very funny season. The year started off, we had a draw with a team under new management, went on to do decent after that, up in Ballygofay against Donegal. Neil McGee nabbed the late goal against us to get a draw for Donegal. But I suppose the final league game, we went up to Newbridge, and last minute point from Ewing got a win for Kildare. They beat us by a point. Simultaneously, Meath kicked a late equaliser against Tyrone, and that point kept them up on scoring them. So that relegated us. But I suppose if you can imagine, as a 20, 21-year-old, I remember driving back to college from training that year, back down to Galway one night, and just saying to the lad in the car with me how great it'd be to, have 5 or 6 years of Division 2 team. That'd be a decent level for Sligo to be operating at. But you kind of felt, we got relegated that year. As a young lad, you felt, we'll get back up to Division 2. But it went on. We spent, 7, 8 years in Division 3 trying to get promoted. And I suppose maybe that little bit of flippancy that I would have had about relegation in 2011, it was the complete opposite of that in 2019. We were relegated from 3 to 4. And I suppose maybe, with the wisdom of age or relative age, that hit very, very hard.
I was going to say, that's 3 to 4 is a cruel one.
Yeah, 3 to 4 is a cruel one. And, I think even when I would have started off Division 4, it was kind of every year there was 2, maybe 3 teams who were very likely to come out of it, or who would have streamed away from the pack.
Yeah.
But Division 4 evolved over the years, and it's now become a bit of a bear pit in that there's, 4 or 5 teams who can all beat each other. Probably best exemplified by Division 4 this year. So, I remember that day, it was actually early March, because we had lost all our league games, maybe 3rd or 4th of March. 2019, we were relegated to Division 4. And there was a lot of introspection after that, because you just knew it was not going to be straightforward to come up out of Division 4. Particularly, we had 2 years of management change and big turnover of players. We were going down. It wasn't the Division 4 where it was, where, you were probably going to come down to maybe one game, which was going to decide your fate. It was really, really disappointing to go down. And I suppose you questioned everything you're doing, and for me, a big fear was, how it reflected, and among even young people in the county, or possible future Sligo footballers. I guess it's maybe something that's a little unique to Sligo, that's not as big a problem in some of the other counties. Particularly, if I look at Mayo, for example, our nearest and dearest neighbours. Gaelic football in Mayo is absolutely huge. Every youngster in Mayo, I see even second generation Mayo guys around Sligo, and all they want to do is wear that Mayo jersey and kick football for Mayo. But in Sligo, Sligo Rovers, there's a great academy set up there. Even Sligo Rugby Club, very popular. So we already have a smaller playing population. We have competition from rugby and soccer. So you're very conscious that going down to Division 4, are some of those 12, 13, 14-year-olds going to be as ambitious to want to play Gaelic football for Sligo? So, all that comes into it, and that's the reality of it. You want to be playing at the top level, and when that relegation happens, it's a very easy thing for people in the county to kind of throw the hat at it, and, to be honest, to belittle Sligo football and belittle Sligo footballers, and that doesn't create a next generation of footballers.
Yeah, it's that cycle you get into, and I was looking actually at Division 4. and Division 3, and there's this idea that the league has been such an enormous success, and there's a pathway through from the bottom to the top, and 6 of the teams in Division 4 now we're in Division 4 the first time that Division 4 was established, so that's 6 out of 8, and well, there's another team, Kilkenny, who don't even play anymore at this level, so it's there's a bit of a kind of a spurious idea around that. And I look though at Division 4. Do you think Sligo will go up this year?
I think they've had a really good league.
They're top with Laois on 8 points, with Wicklow behind. Wicklow had another good win at the weekend, beating Leitrim. That's a big turnaround in Leitrim's season, and or in Wicklow's season, and in Leitrim's in the opposite direction. And Wexford hanging on there. How do you see that Division 4? Who's coming out of Division 4?
Yeah, I've been, reasonably happy with Sligo's league. Obviously disappointing performance and result against Laois the first day, but ever since they've been brilliant. But I think they're in a very awkward position in that they're still going to have to win their last 2 games to assure themselves of promotion, and that's just the way the fixtures are falling. Leitrim are there on 6 points. Another 2 wins will get them promoted. Sligo have 8 points, and they're still going to need another 2 wins. I think you touched on it there. Wicklow, they have Waterford and Wexford to play. That's going to get them to 11 points. So there's a right good chance that those 11 points could get Wicklow promoted.
I think Wexford will be a really tricky game for Wicklow in 2 weeks' time. I think Wexford Park is not going to be straightforward, and Wexford have found a bit of form. But yes, 2 wins gets them to 11, which will be hard caught.
Wexford disappointing yesterday in Sligo. That's ended probably any hopes they would have had promotion. So that probably frames that Wicklow game a little bit different. If you were to look at where Wicklow were maybe after the Sligo game, the second game of the league, you would have said they were miles off promotion. But now they're looking at a game against Waterford and Wexford, win both of them, and there's a good chance they're going to be promoted. Laois against Leitrim next weekend is going to be interesting. It's a must-win for Leitrim to have any hope of promotion. But even if Leitrim were to lose that, they're going to go into the last league game in Carrick-on-Shannon against Sligo, knowing that if they can beat Sligo, they're probably going to deny Sligo promotion as well. So that's even if they're not going for promotion themselves, that's going to be a nice carrot for them. And that's just calling a spade a spade. So
who's your biggest rivalry in Connacht?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. To be honest, and maybe it's reflective of when I would have started playing, and rather than maybe where Sligo are now. So I would have joined Sligo in 2008. To be straight up with you, for me, it was Mayo. In the best way possible, I hate them. And I'd have a real deep
where does that come from?
Because I would have went to college with a number of the guys, so there's that rivalry from playing NUG with some of the Mayo lads. You always want to beat the lads that you're friendliest with, closest to. So and it was probably there was quite a big core to Galway lads there at the time. And maybe the Sligo and Mayo lads probably got on well, and that you always had that wish to kind of beat them. But then I suppose that rivalry comes from jealousy, to be honest. And I'd have a healthy level of begrudgery for what Mayo achieved. Yeah,
it's fundamental to the success of the GAA.
Club and county level, I think. Yeah, you have to begrudge your neighbour in the GAA. It's the foundation.
So Mayo are playing Galway in a Connacht Championship final. Who are you shouting for?
Oh, Galway every day.
Mayo are playing Dublin in All Ireland final. Who are you shouting for?
There's people in Mayo, and even the players in Mayo, I'd like to see them win in All Ireland, but Dublin.
Yeah, interesting.
I'll be very honest with you. It is a jealousy because when we say 2010 we would have beaten Mayo in Markievicz Park, and that was probably a line in the sand moment because Mayo went out and unfortunately they got a decent management team in after that who I think transformed a lot of the players in Mayo, brought them to a new level. I would have even seen from some of the lads who would have been in college with just a completely different attitude and aptitude towards their approach, in their approach towards football. He lifted them to a completely different level. We played them in a Connacht final in 2012. Colin Boyle picked a supposed point that, I don't know, James, if you were hooked up to the lie detector, was it a point?
Of course, it was a point. It was given, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, we've all seen umpires in the GAA lately.
Neil,
But,
it's very impressive the way you're processing all this, Neil. You see,
it's kind of
you're mellowing into retirement here.
Yeah, you've got to let it go, Neil. You've got to let it go.
I won't mention all the third man fouling. That was that was actually the year before the black card. I think Sean Canada gets blamed for bringing in the black card, but Mayo have a lot to answer for. But from my own perspective, it will be Mayo, and it's because of that, rivalry with guys that you'd be friendly with, that begrudging respect. But at the minute, the Sligo's biggest rival in Connacht has to be Leitrim, because we're playing them regularly. They're on the same level as us. They're a barrier to us getting promoted this year, and they're a barrier to us getting to a Connacht final this year and into the Sam Maguire round robin.
James, what's your view of Sligo?
Well, it was different to before I heard that answer from Neil. I know. I know. I remember in the early days some serious tussles, and Neil playing in them. So they could have gone either way, to be honest. So and a few of my last playing days, I remember getting sent off against Sligo. Eamon O'Hara tripped on something, and I got sent off as a result. But it's some good battles. But I think Neil's point is very valid. The playing population, look at numbers don't lie to a certain extent, and there's a huge playing population in Mayo. Sports on a high, so people are involved and want to play it. So it's very positive from that. So there's good numbers coming through all the time. I'd always expect Mayo to have a number of very good players. Sligo are challenged that way with everything that's going on, and there's the city, country, rural divide, and all that kind of stuff. And soccer obviously has a big impact in it. So, but I think Sligo and Leitrim this year, there's going to be a couple of serious tussles there, and that chance again to a Connacht final. Yeah, and what the prize that holds is huge, and could. I think what Neil's alluding to there a little bit, it could kick things on in Sligo if they have a very good year this year. Imagine promotion, imagine Connacht final, imagine All-Ireland series. That'd generate something for sure. So, but look, I'm still laughing at you, Neil. It's time to move on now with this. Come on, rowing behind the bandwagon and cheer us on. We're all west of the Shannon over here. Come on.
Yeah. I love this. I love this as well. Go on. Sorry, Neil.
I think there's just the area where I live. There's maybe just too many Mayo people around as well. We see too many flags, and
every flag a dagger.
Who did you go to college with? Actually, who were you in college with?
I would have been in college with Ger Calf, Chrissy Barrett. Would have played Sigerson with the two lads. Kieran Connery would have been around then as well. And you put me on the spot now, I'm probably going to forget. But some of that group.
It's one of those things though that if you see it, either Sligo or Leitrim or London are going to be in the All-Ireland series because of the way the draw is loaded with Roscommon, Galway and Mayo on the other side, which means most likely 3 teams from Division 2 are going to be in the Tailteann Cup rather than in the Sam Maguire. And at the moment, it is impossible to see, or extremely unlikely to see, how that won't include Kildare because of the way their season has unravelled. Maurice, what's happening in Kildare, do you think?
I think this goes back to what we were talking about last week with the Dublin-Tyrone situation, that you can have structural stuff or you can have whatever you want to call it, attitude, psychological stuff, and that's your pillar. And if that's not there, nothing else really matters after that. And I think that is particularly evident in this Kildare team. Like the way they wilted against Derry, I thought was kind of glaring, and a similar thing at the weekend. I really thought that we get a kick this weekend. This is a team that they annihilated less than 12 months ago, ran 5 goals past them, and we didn't see that response at all. So I think in that regard, And that's going back to what we saw with the way Tyrone could turn around. You would assume there could be a short-term fix, but it doesn't look like it. The only thing is, though, Paul, they have two. You would still think they have 2 winnable games left.
Yeah.
And then.
But you would have thought they had 3 winnable games left last week,
yeah.
And now they're down to 2 winnable games, and this begins to tighten up.
It does, definitely, yeah, it does. I still do think that the fundamental problem is not. You can't be talking about structure, system of play, or that they don't know what they're doing, because none of that is relevant unless they get the attitude thing right, and that is the most striking thing for me. Being after games, watching what happened against Cork, Dublin in last year's Leinster final again, is that they're wilted in all of those situations, and so until you fix that, I think nothing else is relevant.
James, I'll tell you where I think Kildare are. I think Kildare, you can make a very strong case that Kildare belong in the Tailteann Cup, and not alone do they belong in the Tailteann Cup, but there is far from a guarantee that they'll win it.
Yeah. Like I said last week, and I think there's a lot of players with capability in that Kildare team.
Absolutely agree.
I do. Look, and again, as I said last week, when you're not in the camp or you're not inside it, you have no idea really what the culture is, or what the attitude is, or what is or isn't going on. So, but certainly performances that they're putting in, there's something not right. And whether that's the players aren't doing their stuff, away from the lights. They're not really putting in the, there's an awful difference between going to the gym and really doing a gym session, or going away to the pitch and working on some stuff yourself, or even the commitment and the effort level at training. I don't know this. I'm only making assumptions here. I'm not.
Sure.
But that's where you typically see where things are wrong. That effort at training, is it going to training, or is it absolutely going and not going to training out of the park? With everything that you've got. That to me, those sort of areas that if they're not being applied at the highest level, you end up with hassle in the camp. Inconsistency on the fields. The management are to blame, or this or to blame, or that. And it ends up in just a cesspit where. Sometimes people just want out. They're nearly happy the thing ends in sort of disaster. And I'm being extreme there, but that can happen. So their levels of performance it indicates that there's something going on. What that is, unless you're in it, we won't know. But I'd like to see. They've 2 games. They've Meath in their last game, I think.
Yeah, they've Limerick and Meath left.
Yeah, Limerick and Meath. They've very winnable games for them, and away it go, but there's definitely something that's just not right at the moment.
And by contrast, Louth are flying under Mickey Hart. Why is Mickey Hart such a good manager?
The experience, he's seen it all, done it all. Like, how many years experience has that guy got at every age level, at club, at under 21, at senior with Tyrone and now Louth. So he's an amazing experience, and he's an original thinker of the game, for sure. He's his own style. I see it today. Read at the weekend that there's no backs or no forwards anymore. They're all just football. That whole format. So he's always trying to look and evolve the game to be as effective as he can for the group of players that he has, and that's what I think a great manager should do. So he's always thinking, he's always strategizing. But look, to get a group, you go back to Tyrone, how organised they were, but the brilliant players they had up front, and he set it up accordingly, and how aggressive they were in their attitude. So he brings that. So for attitudes to be that strong, he's obviously a very good manager as well. In how he communicates his message, because players just hook, line, and sinker buy into it, and that's you're seeing it that in Louth, structure, organised. They believe in what he's saying, and what they're trying to do and how they're trying to play, and they're getting the benefits from it. So it's amazing to see how he can go from team to team and be so successful.
Can you see yourself into your 60s managing an inter-county team? Could you, for example, would you cross the Great Divide over to Sligo? Could you see yourself being a manager of a different county team there?
I don't think I've said that a few times. No, I don't think so. But particularly being an inter-county manager in your 60s, you know, or even maybe it was the way I went about it. It's a huge role. It's 80, 90. Well, it's every hour you can possibly give in a week. You know, it's on your mind all the time. The amount of things you have to do. It's a huge role. And certainly, I think you've seen that with managers now. You know, a lot of managers are retired as such from a normal role. I think that has to be for nearly health reasons at this stage. It's a huge role. So you need to be strong. You need to have the time and the space to do it.
Were you asked by other counties? Were you asked by other counties during the autumn to go and manage them?
I was.
Who asked you?
I'm not going to tell you. It wouldn't be fair. I'm not going to tell you.
Okay, give me a number. Just tell me how many asked you then. Don't tell me who they were.
There was well, 3.
3, 4?
No, 3. But listen, just when I have you there and you're asking questions, I think maybe I can ask a question, if you don't mind. I know you were having. I don't like this. A ref assessment last week. I think it's only fair that you give us an overview of how you did. Were you happy with your performance? How things ended up? Would that be okay, Paul?
There's a whole load of GDPR issues.
If you can just cut to the chase, we don't have
and health and safety reasons why I think it's enough to say that it wasn't the success. It wasn't as big a success as it might have been, is how I'd put it.
Okay. What learnings are you taking from it, Paul? What is it you need to look at?
That I should bring my whistle with me when I go and do a course. No, I'll tell you how it happened. So there were 50 questions, and I did them in 2 batches of 25, and I had 15 minutes to answer 25 questions. Now, some of them were a little bit fiddly, but some of them were. I'll be brutally honest about the stuff I should know. And and as you know, I'd read the rule book last week, so it's not like I shouldn't know. But I'll tell you, I got now I have asked for clarification on a couple of them, but there's no hiding from this. I got 17 wrong out of 50, and you have to get 80% to be a referee in Offaly. So I'm somewhere. Oh God, what's the maths on that? So I'm somewhere around the mid 60s.
What happens now, Paul? Where does this journey go?
Where does this journey go? I was actually enjoying this podcast much more about 3 minutes ago than I am now. I tell you though, there's something. Sorry, Neil.
I'd still like to hear your question answered, Paul. You've been very honest there. Now I think we're still waiting for a few answers from James.
Actually, Neil, we will move on from this. I will say, by the way, I do want to say in passing, the Offaly County Board are doing something really good this year. They're bringing all senior football managers in. They're doing a day. They're doing that test that I've done. They're going to do they're going to do video analysis. They're going to sit down and do a workshop with referees to do this thing on. I think it's a really progressive step, and it's one that I think can only help, at least until a match gets serious and we all lose the head again. I want to move this on really quickly. Neil, who's the best manager you had when you were in Sligo?
That's a very difficult question as well. Can I take James's approach on that one?
You had 3 or 4 good ones.
Yeah, not to fluff it, Paul, but I think they all brought unique skills, and I think the idea of a manager in the GA it's now a flawed concept, and James mentioned there, some retired guys going back into the management scene, and I think that's where the GA is evolving to, but needs to evolve to, and it's kind of that team manager role that we maybe see in rugby, where it's impossible, absolutely impossible for one person to go in and take on the role of a senior intercounty manager, to be the guy that's making the phone calls, doing the logistics, and putting out the cones on a Tuesday and a Thursday night on the pitch. maybe I started off, you would have had Kevin Walsh there, and you know, he was a super man manager. You know, in terms of Sligo won a kind of title 2007, 2008, didn't go well. Maybe fellas got a little above their stations. Maybe there was a hangover from 2007. Commitment levels maybe weren't where they needed to be. Kevin Walsh came in, completely eradicated that. You know, there was absolutely no excuses. You know, just created a real good culture of commitment and buy-in around the group. Was Kevin's strength maybe on the pitch in terms of coaching drills? You know, probably not. Has he evolved in that sense? From what I see, what he did with Galway, even from him working alongside Paddy Talley, I think he probably has hugely evolved in that, and he's bringing those coaching skills to Cork now, where he doesn't have to do those management skills. But you know, Kevin Walsh as a man manager for a team in that place that we were, absolutely excellent.
I read his coaching book, by the way, his book was kind of coaching out about. It was really interesting insight. So I can see, I can see what you mean by his man management. But I do think I do agree. I think he's put like really good systems and drills into that as well.
Yeah, and you know, maybe some of those drills and things are something he maybe would have delegated more in Sligo, and he was just the kind of guy that anybody rang him with an excuse that they weren't going to be somewhere, they came off the phone and they were going to be at that training session or at that gym session. You know, it was, we'd still talk about it now. He just had a unique way to tell fellas they were doing something that they had no idea that they were going to be doing. You know, Niall Carew would have came in then, you know, again, great experience of working in under Kieran McGeeney, you know, brought a lot of that with him. He had Ronan Sweeney from Kildare alongside him, who was, you know, absolutely top class on the pitch, and you know, probably in terms of, you know, football coaching, one of the best coaches that I would have ever worked with. But you know, it was I think delegation is probably the most important skill that the manager of a Gaelic football team can have at the minute.
Do you agree with that, James?
Oh yeah, there's so many tasks they're involved in managing intercounty level. It's insane now, particularly maybe, you know, if you're competitive each year. So you know, you hear about all these huge backroom teams, but they're needed. And you got to remember, all those are part time. There's no one full time. There's there's people doing it with their family life and with the normal working life. So it's a huge task, But even with all that delegation, and Neil's 100% right, you need to take away the logistics, you need to take away any of the organisation, any of the admin, any of that stuff, you know, managing players' lifestyle outside football, or whatever, all that kind of stuff needs to be taken away from manager. But even with that, you're probably dealing with 40, 45 players. And ultimately, if the player isn't playing, you know, it's the conversation that still needs to be with the manager as such. You know, there's other things, the selectors and whatever, there's other sort of prep conversations, but you know, if someone's playing or not, it's still, so there's still, even with all that taken away, it's a huge task, a very enjoyable one for the majority, but it's a huge task now. And I do think there needs to, I think Neil's touched on that, there needs to be some sort of structure or methodology around management in the GA, because it's such a huge area now.
Yeah, and I think even to take it from like a micro level of, you know, a club, you know, there's so many clubs around the country that are maybe, you know, come the end of the season, you hear them say, oh, you know, we need to get a new manager. There's nobody in the club that can do it. But I think every club in the country has people who can maybe manage the team, and that's maybe, you know, pick a 15 at the weekend, maybe even tactically decide this is the way we're going to play. But there's very few clubs in the country who will have people within the club who can manage the team and coach the team and even have that knowledge of maybe S&C that's required.
Yeah,
that's just the basis now. So it's, you know, I think this idea of a manager is, you know, it's a thing of the past.
Yeah, it's that. Yeah, we're going back to committee. Maurice, I'm going to really put you on the spot here to finish up. Who's going to be relegated from Division 1?
I'll say Donegal, and I think Monaghan will go. And I go on, but I think Clare are gone and I think Limerick will go as well from Division 2.
Clare and Limerick, yeah, because the head-to-head ruins Clare, doesn't it? The two head-to-heads that they could possibly profit from, Meath and Kildare, kind of ruined them. So I'd like to thank Neil for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to have you. To James as well for everything, and to Maurice. We're going to thanks to Larry Ryan for running the podcast, to Raf Rocca, to Jack Neville, to Tony Lean, and to everyone at Examiner Sport, and thanks to Allianz for their support. Beimid Harnash Galua.
Remember that, lad.
There's a small bit of a needle there.
Come on, Mayo, you've got to get Andy Moran into the game.
Listen,